Alright gang, welcome back. What's going on? Now, if you are a beginner in film photography, maybe you're just here looking for a solid 35mm camera, or if you're like a seasoned vet, somebody who's super passionate about film, here for the love of film photography, man, stick around because today I'm going to be talking about my favorite 35mm SLR cameras. Alright gang, so before we get started, man, grab some coffee, kind of sit back. We have a short but informational one for you guys, and also hit that subscribe button down below and like, so it lets me know if you guys like these types of videos or not, because moving forward, man, I plan to do a lot more stuff based around film photography itself, to infusing in street photography here and there as we go. But anyways, let's go ahead and continue on, man. Now, I'll be honest with you, these are not going to be in any particular order. It's not like my least favorite to my favorite. But what I will say though is that a lot of these cameras are going to be at different price points. So you have a camera in here that's going to be 20 bucks, and then you also have a camera in here that is upward towards like $350. So it really kind of ranges, and so I'd recommend you guys stick around for the entire ride so that you guys can see which camera works for you, or maybe if you just want to buy one of these cameras in the future because you got gas just like me. If you guys don't know what gas is, it's gear acquisition syndrome. Basically, you buy too much cameras. But with that said, you guys, let's go ahead and just jump right in, man. Now, the first camera that I want to talk about is a camera that I recently picked up. Matter of fact, I picked it up last week, and it's this one right here, you guys. It's the Olympus OM1. Now, you guys might be wondering, how is this one of your favorite cameras? You just got the damn thing, and you're right. But I'll be honest with you, man, one of my favorite cameras before I owned the OM1 was the Olympus OM2N. Personally, I think all OM cameras, even the OM10, are some of the best 35mm SLRs. Something about Olympus and the way they were made, it just really feels like a good quality camera. Now, if you guys haven't seen the OM1 before, folks, here it is close up. One of the cool things about OM cameras is that the shutter speeds are not actually right here. This dial right here does not control shutter speed. This is your ASA ISO dial for the light meter. Your shutter speed dial is going to be on the lens barrel itself, not on the lens itself, but on the camera body right here. Other than that, man, it's a standard 35mm SLR camera. One thing that I do like about these OM cameras is that they're fairly small. I have kind of big hands, but it's a small camera. Let me just say that. But with that said, man, the lenses that you can get with this are sharp as hell. Some of my favorites are like the 50mm 1.8. The 50mm 1.4 is super sharp. I just put a test roll through it. And I'll be honest with you guys, man, if you're looking for a solid camera, the OM1 is a great choice. Maybe just to get started with, or for the seasoned vet. There's a lot of history behind this camera as well. It's perfect for travel. It's perfect for portraiture, street photography. I'm going to be doing some like nighttime portraits with this in Cinestill in a couple of weeks here. And yeah, it's a really good all-around camera, and I'd highly recommend this camera to anybody out there. So Olympus OM1, you can find them online anywhere between like 50 to 100 bucks for the body, and if you get lucky, you can get one with a lens as well. Now, moving on, man, we're gonna talk about my all-time favorite 35mm SLR, the Minolta X700. Now, the X700 to me is a very special camera. If you guys have been riding with me for a while now, it's a sentimental camera because it's one of my first 35mm SLR cameras, actually. I said camera like 20 times in that statement. But the X700, I believe, was my second film camera, and it's really what I learned film photography on. So exposure, it has aperture priority, it also has program mode. So if you're new to learning exposure and maybe you just want to get good results off the bat, you set that bad boy in A, you control the aperture, and you're going to be good to go. Or maybe you want a little bit more power, more control over it, go ahead and just set it over in a man. You can do it as well. The light meter in here is great, and it's a super light camera. I'll be honest with you, most of the camera here is made out of plastic, which makes it light. The first lens I'd recommend you guys pick up is this one right here, the 45mm f2. It's a pancake lens, and if you look at it, man, the profile on that baby right here is just super tiny. So I like bringing cameras around that aren't going to be too obtrusive, cameras that maybe if I'm going out with some friends, it's not going to get in the way, but it's still going to give you the results that you would expect from a high quality film SLR. Now, the X700 itself is fairly inexpensive. I'd say 50 to 100 bucks like the OM1, and if you get lucky with a lens, anywhere between 100 bucks to 120. Check it out, man. The Minolta X700, a beautiful 35mm SLR camera. All right, next up on the table, man, we have the Nikon F3. Now, the Nikon F3 is considered one of the higher end not point and shoot, excuse me, 35mm SLR cameras, and it's a professional grade camera. Back in the day, man, people in studios, people who just shot professionally would shoot with like the F3. This is like the top of the line model from Nikon at the time. One cool feature is that it has aperture priority, but there's no program mode. So you only have manual and you have aperture priority. So you're limited to 2 different kind of shooting modes. With that said, this has a max shutter speed of 1/2000th of a second, and it also has an incredibly solid built-in light meter. And I should mention, the X700 and the OM1 both have light meters built in as well. But what makes this camera special is the overall build quality, man, and just the sharpness of all of the Nikon glass. Don't even get me started, man. You have so many different choices with Nikon glass, it's insane. Body's made mostly out of metal. As you see, we got some nice, I think it's patina. I don't know if it's brassing or patina going. It's a hefty camera. Also, the film advance lever has 11 ball bearings. So when you advance the film, just look at how smooth this is. It feels like butter. Now, the F3 as well has something called a removable prism. And if you just look right here on these little tabs, you can lift up on them and bam, your prism comes off. And this leads over into so many different options. So you can use this camera as a waist level camera, kind of like you would with a TLR. You can change out the focusing screens. You can also change out the different finders on top. So if you want something that is just gonna look down straight into it, you can do that as well. And that's when I say, man, this camera has endless possibilities. It's very customizable, and it's a professional grade 35mm SLR. So if you can get one at a good price point, I would recommend it. But the F3 is purely just like a premium feeling film SLR in my opinion. And if you get lucky to get your hands on one for a good price, definitely snag it up. The F3s go from anywhere between $200 to, I've seen them go up to like $400, $500. Check it out, Nikon F3, a legendary film SLR right here. Now, after talking about the F3, we can only talk about the next camera up, the Canon F1. Now, the F1 and the F3, I feel like are very similar in terms of features as well in terms of like overall shooting experience. Now, the F1 here is a solid kind of all metal 35mm SLR like the F3. You got the Canon FD lenses up on the front. You have a nice feeling grip right here. The advanced lever is not as smooth as the F3s because, I don't know, it feels a little bit more tactical in a way. You also have aperture priority and a 1/2000th of a second max shutter speed, just like the F3. But check this out, man. Just like the F3, bam, you can take off the finder again. And the finder again, it's customizable. You can get different finders for it. You can get different focusing screens. As you guys see, I have a grid focusing screen in mind right now. And when you compare the F3 and the F1, it all really comes down to what you prefer. You have pretty much the same features, but the differences are huge in terms of like the material as well as the lenses. So if you like FD glass, go for the F1. If you like the AIS glass, the Nikon F mount glass, get the Nikon. They're both different finishes, so you have a nice shiny coat on the F3, and then here on the F1 you have a matte finish. But at the end of the day, man, they're both really good cameras. You can't go wrong with either. But the F1, I'll tell you right now, is a much more tactical camera. And if you want something that feels and is built like a tank, the F1 is for you. I'd say the F1 is a great step up from something like the AE1 program. If you already have that, definitely grab the F1 if you can find one for a good price. These go for anywhere between $150 to around $300 is the top price I've been seeing them lately. So check it out, Canon F1. Alright, so in the beginning, I mentioned that we were going to have a camera in here that was $20. And the next camera is going to be exactly that, folks. And I want to give you guys a disclaimer right now. It's insanely good for what it is. The next camera on this list, man, is the Canon EOS Rebel 2000. Now, this thing right here, man, is the plastic fantastic. you know, to spice it up, I put a little battery grip here on the bottom to give it a little bit more grip as well. And I'll be honest with you, man, this pairs up really nicely with like your Canon 50mm 1.8 STM. That's the lens that I have on it right here. If you want something, or maybe if you already own like Canon EF glass, this camera can take that and make really, really sharp film photographs. You know, they say when you shoot film, it's not about the camera that gives its sharpness, it's the lenses. And so if you have Canon glass already, man, this is a no-brainer. Find one of the Rebel 2000s and slap your lenses on there. You're gonna have an amazing little setup. Now, to talk a little bit more about the camera here, this camera has pretty much all the features you'd expect in like a modern day, not a modern day SLR, but something like a 5D Mark III. So you have aperture priority, you got manual mode, you have shutter priority, you have program mode. You can set your ISO, I think, all the way up to like 3200. And there's just a ton of features in here, like double exposure. You have, you know, ability to sync flash as well. It has a nice little built-in flash if you just want to use the one on camera. And it's a plastic fantastic. I don't think, you know, Canon made this camera with professionals in mind. I think this was more of like a consumer grade or even like a semi-professional grade camera. But in all honesty, if you're looking for a film camera and you already shoot digital Canon EOS glass, this is a no-brainer. 20 bucks, pick one of these up on eBay. I'd recommend getting that battery grip, and you're gonna have yourself an insanely good setup, man. 20 bucks. All right, moving on. All right, so to my knowledge, the next camera up is the last 35mm film SLR Canon manufactured, and it's this one right here, the Canon EOS 3. Now, the EOS 3 looks a lot different than the Rebel 2000. I mean, just the overall size, this looks more close to something like a 5D Mark III, 5D Mark IV, whatnot. It has that nice, solid, chunky Canon grip. But if you look on the back, man, it's a film camera. So, now this camera is insane, man. When I say you're looking for, you know, maybe shooting weddings on film, you can definitely, listen to the shutter sound. You can definitely get away with shooting a wedding on film with this, you know, with this camera right here. It takes all of your Canon glass, like I said earlier, but this one is like a more beefed up version of the Rebel 2000. You have all the same features. One feature that I want to talk about, folks, is something that was implemented into this camera that I don't know why, you know, Canon hasn't really brought over into their modern day cameras, and that's called eye control autofocus. Now, I don't know if you guys can see that right here on the bottom left corner, man. It says eye control. On the back here, you have a little sensor, and the sensor reads where your eyeball is looking, and it sounds like something out of a science fiction book. I'm telling you, but the sensor will read where your eyes, you know, looking, and then based on where your eyeball is looking, it'll use that focus point, what you're looking at, as the focus point to focus on. And you can calibrate it on top here, and I'm gonna give you guys a quick little example. Toggle it on. After you toggle it on, you're gonna half press, and then you're just gonna look where you want it to go. So that's freaking weird, and it actually works. I'd say, you know, it's accurate about 75% of the time. It's something that I don't always use, but it's one of those things where, you know, maybe if you're in a photography group and they don't know about the EOS 3 yet, you could be like, bro, I can focus with my eyes, and they're like, duh, everybody can. But you're like, no, watch this, and you start focusing where you look. It's a super cool feature that I feel like doesn't get enough love, but I'll be honest with you, I don't always use it. Alright, so that pretty much wraps up my favorite 35mm SLR cameras, and I want to leave you guys with a couple of different things to remember when you're choosing a film camera, especially for the beginners out there. The biggest contributor to sharpness and image quality for film cameras are the lenses, and so if you were to kind of go a single route, and this is the route I would take if I could just do it all over again, I would go out there, have some friends, and test out different lens mounts. So I would test out the EF glass, I would test out FD glass, Nikon F glass, maybe even Leica glass, and then, you know, find the lenses that you like, find the lenses that work for you, and then buy into the camera bodies later on. Because what you'll figure out later down the road is that the camera bodies are all pretty much the exact same. They do one thing and they have one purpose. Look online, look at image quality, look at like sample photographs from each of these different cameras and pay attention to the lenses, and then see what works for you and what is in your budget. You don't need an expensive film camera to make beautiful images, because the camera is really just a tool. That's gonna wrap it up, you guys. I hope you enjoyed today's video, man. Again, hit that subscribe button down below if you are brand new to this channel. We got a lot of more film photography content coming along here, so thank you guys for staying into the end, man. And it's gonna wrap it up. I'll see you guys in the next one. As always, Minolta Gang.